Chag Sameach and Good Yantif. I hope that you all had a wonderful Seder last night and revving up for tonight as well. Hope you have some leftovers or have a whole new set of dishes that are ready for tonight or in preparation. I hope that you also found ways to incorporate Israel and the hostages and anti-Semitism at your tables. I'm sure you did. It meant for meaningful and thought-provoking and hopefully helpful conversations. I wanted to focus, if you have the sheet in front of you, on a passage in the Haggadah that you may or may not do. It is after we eat. Just a show of hands, who recites this "pour out your wrath" passage? Oh, we got some of us. Thank you very much. So this falls in the Haggadah towards the end of the stages and the steps. This is technically part of Barech, which is the end of Birkat HaMazon, the grace after meals after we eat. And it is in the course of opening the door, welcoming Elijah and heralding the coming of the Messiah. And in the middle of that, we don't actually have the quote here. I'll read you what the Haggadah says. Shvoch chamatcha el hagoyim, pour out fury upon your nations that don't know you, upon the kingdoms that do not invoke your name, for they have devoured Jacob and desolated Jacob's home. Pour out your wrath on them, may your blazing anger overtake them. Pursue them in wrath, destroy them from under the heavens of God. Now, does that fit in the joyous optimism of the Haggadah? After blessing God, preparing for the fourth cup, welcoming Elijah, and God willing, the Messiah, we get these words, pour out your wrath. It's a strange sort of juxtaposition and a strange moment in our Seder, and I wanted to bring this sheet, which gives us some possibilities for conversation if we do bring it to our Seder, and I wanted to share a couple other thoughts about it. This is actually not in the original version of the Haggadah. It's not even in the first 1,000 years version of the Haggadah. It's not in our oldest manuscripts of the Haggadah. It's not what the rabbis of the Talmud said. It's not what the ancient Israelites said as they were leaving Egypt. This is still old. It's only 900 years old. And it was first created by Jews living during the Middle Ages who were persecuted during the Crusades. And that is the starting point for this. It was added during a time of great anti-Jewish persecution, and one of the occurring events that made Passover in particular a difficult time for Jews living in Europe was the blood libel. And what's notable in this passage is, you heard that passage, pour out your wrath, pour out your wrath, pour out their wrath. What is the passage not saying? Forgive. Okay, anything else it's not saying? Is it telling the Jewish people to go out and avenge wrath? No, right? This is asking God to bring divine justice and divine retribution. So what Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory says, that Judaism is a religion of justice, a religion of love, compassion, and forgiveness and generosity. Pour out your wrath, he says, is not a call for vengeance. It's not a call for human action, but it's a prayer for divine justice. Let us understand one day, if not now, God, the justice of your world, O Judge of the earth. In fact, what is added here in many Haggadot over the years is as soon as we say this prayer, pour out your wrath upon the enemies and those who despise us and those who persecute us and attack us, is in many Haggadot, starting in the 1500s, so 500 years ago, are prayers thanking and blessing righteous Gentiles who have stood by us, protected us, and defended us. And also at this point, this is where many take a moment to honor and memorialize the 6 million that were killed in the Holocaust, especially since the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising is around Passover time, and the Nazis actually plan to liquidate the ghetto on the first day of Pesach. So why is it located in this place? After we bless God with Birkat HaMazon, we are full and satiated, and we are welcoming Elijah. And the next thing in the Haggadah is Hallel, where we sing these joyous psalms, and we're so elated and happy over our redemption, we pause for this moment. It's an interesting question, like why here? Adin Steinsaltz, Rabbi Steinsaltz writes, after eating the meal and reciting Birkat HaMazon, offering gratitude for our food, why do we recite this? As we give thanks and praise God after eating, those who consume us do not mention God's name, and therefore we talked about consuming and blessing God, and this is the moment. And he alludes to an ancient idea which I've never seen before, that there were 4 cups, which we do for redemption, and that some Jews also did 4 cups for the curses that fell upon the Jewish people, and that this actually was like a blessing or a curse recited over the cup over our destruction. That didn't happen, thank God. Still this question is, what do we do with this? What do we do? So I wanted to bring a couple of examples and ideas. The Wellsprings of Freedom Haggadah teaches us that anger and righteous indignation, which we feel, perhaps you're feeling that right now with what's happening in the world, needs to be addressed. We need to take a moment to express our anger, to express our righteous indignation. However, our tradition teaches that we do not seek revenge. To be a Jew is to work toward bringing in the better world of the Messianic era. From our own bitter enslavement of experience, we learn that we cannot wrong the stranger because we know the heart of the stranger, having been slaves in Egypt. So there's this balance between holding on to anger and releasing anger, but also doing our part to better the world. So in this supplement, which is from the Hartman supplement, which is from Mishael Tzion Israeli Haggadah, there are 3 suggestions that Mishael Tzion suggests. The first is this poem called A Vow, which is translated from the Hebrew, and that was written, you can read in the notes, that was written in response to Israeli Jews living in Palestine in the early 1940s, hearing about the atrocities of the Holocaust, hearing about the murder of millions of Jews. And Avraham Shlansky wrote this poem at that moment upon hearing it. And this poem was then added into a kibbutz Haggadah on the Gaza border in the 1950s. You can read it. It's very powerful. Basically, what it says is, I make a vow to remember it all and forget nothing. Forget not one thing to the last generation until my indignation shall be extinguished. A vow lest for nothing shall the night of terror have passed. A vow lest for nothing shall I return my want without having even learned anything, even at this time. And you can see on the side, Mishael Tzion gives some guided questions. If you do share this at your Seder tonight, some questions for conversation about how these pieces fit together, especially in light of October 7th. And if you turn the page over, the 2 other passages that they suggest, the first is a quote from Rachel Goldberg. You probably know of her. She was Hirsch Goldberg Poland's mother, outspoken speaker of a parent of a hostage. And this was her quote that she spoke at the footsteps of the UN. She was not allowed in the United Nations, but in front of the United Nations, she gave these remarks, hatred is easy. And it's a very moving speech, and you can take a piece of it and bring it to your Seder. And the last section that he brings is, we talked about our traditional Haggadah from 900 years ago has a section called Pour Out Your Wrath. But more contemporary, but still fairly old, for 500 years, there's been a version which is Pour Out Your Love, where we don't ask God just to pour out wrath and anger and retribution, But God should also rain love into our world, and that's a response. So some people choose to only read pour out their love at their Seder table. Some people read both, pour out your wrath, and then as a not a parallel, but in contradiction, pour out your love, where we pray for love for all of those who are not Jewish to stand by us and to support us. So I wanted to bring one last teaching, and that is from Reb Shlomo Carlebach. Rabbi Carlebach teaches it's found in a Haggadah called The Night That Unites, that when we reach this stage in our Seder, we are full. We're full from eating. We're full of so much hope and optimism for all humanity in the world. It's not in anger or spite that we speak of eradicating our enemies, wiping out evil from our world. It's now near the end of the Seder when we feel the potential for true holiness. That is why we ask the world we live in, why does our world still filled with so much pain and so much evil when we are so uplifted? Our ancient people, our ancestors were redeemed, so we feel redeemed on Seder night after joining together in joy and eating and going through our story. Why is there still so much evil and difficulty and pain in this world? And Reb Shlomo says the prayer, pour out your wrath, is a call to remove evil from our world together. How much would it be that our world just did not have evil? Quoting the Kotzker Rebbe, Reb Shlomo says, you could read the phrase with love for what we are truly praying to God is. We said, pour out your wrath. The words are shvach chamatcha. Do you know how to say hot or warm in Hebrew? Cham. The same word for wrath, chamatcha, is the word for heat, for warmth. So Reb Shlomo here, based on the Kotzker Rebbe, does a little play on that word. Are we really asking God to pour out your wrath, or are we asking God to warm this cold world? Not global warming, but our world seems very cold right now. It seems extremely cold. And this is what Reb Shlomo suggests in the name of the Kotzker Rabbi. Please pour out your cham, God. Warm up this world all over the nations because the world is such a cold place. Bring warmth to all. And one last teaching. We have the zroa. You probably have a shank bone on your table. Do you eat it? What do you do with the shank bone? What? I didn't hear what you said. You point to it. Yes. You might point to your zroa, to your shank bone. Thank you, Adam. Right? But what do we do with it? The highest Haggadah suggests that we do something with it at this moment when we read the passage, pour out your wrath. And this is what they suggest. As we conclude our Seder this evening, we draw our attention to the final item on our Seder plate. The zroa, shank bone, literally means arm in Hebrew, reminding us of the outstretched arm with which God brought the Jewish people out of slavery in Egypt. Jewish tradition teaches us that we are God's partner in the continual act of creating a more just world in which all human beings are treated with dignity and compassion. It's our job as well, not to just pray and ask God to warm up our world, not to pray and ask God to bring revenge and retribution and divine justice upon our enemies, but we also have to use our zroa. We have to use our hands to reach out and to better our world. May this Seder tonight bring redemption, bring peace, and bring healing and warmth to all. Chag Sameach.